Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrell, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Ace the HR Exam and Upskill HR. These are two of the courses that I offer for certification prep and recertification for HR leaders. You can learn more about these courses over at Workology.com. In this podcast episode, we're talking about second chance hiring. Second chance hiring is the practice of employing people with criminal records or other major barriers to work, helping them re-enter the workforce and reduce recidivism. More than 70 million Americans have a criminal record, but that doesn't mean they lack talent, potential, or drive. In honor of Second Chance Month just passing this April, this episode explores how fair hiring is a strategic solution for today's talent shortages, especially in construction, utilities, and tech. And that's why I'm excited to have two guests with me on today's podcast. Now, before I introduce our guest for today, I do want to hear from you. Please comment the word podcast on the pinned post over on the Instagram account. It's at Workology Blog, where you can ask questions, leave comments, and make suggestions for future guests, because I want to hear from you. Today's guests are Jane Oates and Teresa Hodge. Jane is a senior policy advisor and former president of Working Nation. A former U.S. Department of Labor official under President Obama, she led national workforce training initiatives, including programs for formerly incarcerated women. She now advises Inventive Technologies on workforce equity and digital access. Teresa is a social entrepreneur, justice reform advocate, and co-founder of Mission Launch and R3 Score Technologies. Her work focuses on expanding economic opportunities for justice-impacted individuals using tech-based solutions. She currently serves as chairwoman of the advisory board for Inventive Technologies. Jane and Teresa, welcome to the Workology Podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. Let's talk about why this conversation about fair chance hiring is especially urgent for HR leaders right now.
Teresa, why don't you start? Yeah. So one, I think that it's important at this time in our country and just in general for us always to make sure that the best talent always surfaces. And sometimes that best talent are individuals who have arrest or conviction records. And, just by way of stats, I don't want everybody to roll their eyes and glaze everybody over, but 1 in 3 Americans have an arrest or conviction record. And by the year 2030, that number is going to grow to 100 million Americans. So when we're not talking about a small population, we're talking about a large swath of the American population. Expected that 1 in 2 working age adults will have an arrest or conviction record. So HR professionals have to learn more about this population so that they can understand, assess this talent, and get them to work and get the best people working for their companies.
Yeah, and Jessica, your audience are all HR professionals, the hardest job in the world, in my estimation. But they have to realize that for decades, that this population, this incredibly talented population, has been invisible to them. They haven't even considered them. You don't go and recruit these folks normally, and we think they should.
Well, I appreciate your insights here. And that's why we're having the podcast, because we think we should, I believe, and we collectively believe as HR leaders, that we should be looking at different populations of people to employ, especially in the world right now where we're really challenged at finding qualified candidates to fill these roles. Teresa, you've lived the reentry experience firsthand. How did that shape your decision to launch Mission, Launch, and R3 Score?
Yeah, no, 100%. When I went to prison a little later in life. I went when I was 44 years old, and I knew one thing for sure was when I came back home from prison, I was going to learn a lot and know a lot about what we call the reentry process. And that's the time when a person leaves a prison or jail. I also, once upon a time, worked as an HR professional. And what I know is that when we were looking for good candidates, sometimes we had to screen down And if I am honest, we used to just screen out folks with records because, in our first cursory look of talent, and you have a big stack of paper, that was back in the day when we would actually get resumes mailed in to us. We had to find ways to drill that down to something that was manageable. And what I knew was I was part of the individuals who were screening folks with records out. And for me, the thought of coming home and taking my lived experience and also my background in HR and bringing those two together to see if we could create workforce solutions was really important to me.
I appreciate you sharing your story so much, and it totally makes sense. And I understand how all of this came together for you because you saw the problem firsthand or experience as an HR leader, and then on the other side in terms of re-entry. So I'm so excited for you to be here to share your knowledge. Jane, moving over to you, how can fair chance hiring help companies solve talent shortages in industries like construction, utilities, and tech?
Well, it's interesting that you start with construction because construction, particularly home builders, have been great examples of fair chance hiring. They have always given people the opportunity to prove themselves. And if you talk to many home builders today, they'll say they're their best employees. Because one of the things that, all the sectors that you bring up, but really every sector, the biggest problem they face right now, while we can talk about the war on talent, but the biggest problem they face right now is retention. People take a job but won't keep it. And, we know that people who hire folks with a criminal record, people who hire the justice involved, they are definitely getting somebody who's not going to be a job hopper. As long as it's a good fit, as long as they were well qualified for the job that they got, they're going to stay and they're going to prove to be your best employees. And every HR professional knows the cost of onboarding and knows the cost of trying to replace somebody before they've even become productive. So these are folks that are going to be great investments.
I absolutely agree. And I think every HR person is feeling it right now because candidates are coming on board. They might stick around for 2 or 3 months because the job hiring process takes that long. And many of them aren't even giving notice. They're just not coming back and then moving to the next opportunity. Let's talk about maybe one of the most promising partnerships you've seen that connect the justice system with real workforce opportunities. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. And I will say that we're really excited about the energy sector. And I know Jane was the person who introduced to me that they're expecting a huge worker shortage. I think at one point I heard the number was 22 million. And then I think recently I heard the number was as high as 40, 50 million, that they're anticipating that as individuals are starting to retire, some of their younger family members and friends who would have normally filled some of those jobs are not filling those positions. And so the thought that utility all across America, we have partnered with the Center for Energy Workforce Development. And Jane, maybe help me out here because you know the stats of who they represent all across the country.
Yeah, they represent literally everybody, gas, oil, natural gas, green energy, everybody except municipal water. And think of them as a trade association. And they have just the ability to bring people together to really talk about the skills necessary for jobs in that incredible sector.
Yeah. And when you think about those jobs, it's a wide range of jobs. Some of them are entry level positions, but they become what we're calling family sustainable wages. So people can come in and get a starter position. And once they are there, they can continue to grow, show their commitment to the organization. And again, they can grow into management positions.
Yeah, and I love the sector because it's one of the few places where I see so many CEOs who started as line people, or who started at, entry level positions and worked their way up the company to become a CEO. You don't see that everywhere.
Absolutely not. And we've covered the green industry, solar and kind of alternative energies. because there is already now a hiring shortage, and I didn't know about the other industries, but it totally makes sense as people are exiting the workforce, moving into retirement or moving into part-time work. We need to fill these roles, and many of them take years of training and experience to be able to slide in to not just management roles, but those specialty roles in that industry.
That's right.
I want to talk a little bit about tools like secure tablets. These are being used in correctional facilities to help incarcerated individuals prepare for reentry. Can you talk to us about what that might look like? I'm curious.
Yeah. So what a lot of people don't know that inside of prison facilities today, and it could be prisons, jails, detention centers all across the United States, there are tablets. Think of an iPad. It's sitting inside of a facility, probably closer to a Kindle, but sitting inside of a facility. And individuals are able to do a wide range of things on those tablets. They're able to make phone calls. In some cases, they're able to do video calls. But what's happening more recently is there's really good quality programming that's taking place on these tablets. And one of the things that Jane and I are super excited about is the work that we're doing with Inventive Technologies, which is the leader in this space, having, I believe, around 650,000 prison tablets all across the United States, serving the men and women who are in prison in a wide range of facilities. They are really looking at what can we put on the tablets to make sure that while people are incarcerated, that they're maximizing their time. And so we've introduced some workforce solutions so that individuals, while they're sitting there, they can get the maximum level of training so that upon their release, they can come home from prison and connect to certain jobs and industries that we know are hiring.
Yeah, and Teresa brought up CEWD before. They've been so incredible. We've been able to digitize their whole curriculum that they have on their online free, but we've been able to put that on the tablets. And it's amazing. It's 125 hours. So somebody upon release can go to a utility company and say, I've done the 125-hour curriculum. They're familiar with the job. They understand what the job requirements are, and they think they can fulfill it because as they've studied this course, they've been successful.
I love hearing about the upskilling and reskilling that's taking place, because that's top of mind for HR professionals in our workforce today. And we don't often hear about other groups, maybe like apprenticeship programs or second chance hiring, and the training that they're going through. We just put those individuals maybe through the interview process, run a background check, and then we make assumptions about what their work experience is or is not, or their training and education.
Yeah. And if I could just add one thing right there, Jessica, is that a lot of people, when they go to prison, they take good skill sets to prison. I talked about me. I went to prison at 44. I took good skill sets to prison. So the opportunity to use a tablet so that your skills remain fresh while you're there, and likewise, that if you are going to have to explore a new profession, there is an opportunity to explore and to do some of that upskilling that you were talking about. But I think that when we think about this population, we have to remember that when you're talking about almost 80 million Americans today with an arrest or conviction record, it's not one person. It's not one profile. It's not one type of skill set that a person has.
I think that's really important. And we do make a lot of assumptions based on how people look or where they live or all these different things. And I appreciate and applaud you too for taking the opportunity to share with us, because we need to be reminded, and maybe we have some biases or just some opinions that we need to rethink. So I want to move into digital credentials. And Jane, this one's for you. How are digital credentials and tech-enabled learning tools aligning with what today's employers need? Because the tablet sounds great, but how do we make sure that these classes and courses and training are in alignment with what I, as HR manager or director of a construction company, tech, all these industries, has open?
Yeah, absolutely, Jessica. I mean, first of all, we all know we live in a digital world, right? So, as Teresa said, some people go into incarceration and they've had some experience in that. And some people have gone in and been in a long time, and when they entered prison, we weren't a digital world, and oops, they come out, and everything from credit cards to online banking to applying for a job, everything is online. So we really think the power is demonstrated by learning on that technology. When you're incarcerated, I don't want to diminish some of the great in-person programs that have happened historically in facilities all over the country. I applaud them and wish we could grow them and scale them. The reality is the limitations on in-person activities in prisons are dictated by health and outbreaks and staffing shortages. But the tablet is yours. Maybe we should make that clear. Every inmate is entitled to have their own tablet, so they can, take their time, take as much time as they need, go back and forth on things. So they have really the ability to use the promise of digital learning. And if we can, like in the case of, we're totally shilling for CEWD here, but in their case, or in the case of, we can put OSHA 10 and OSHA 30, on, and that's something other people take digitally. Those are credentials that employers recognize. And, we hope that as we go on, there'll be more actual employer recognized digital credentials offered and earned on the tablets as we grow this. And this is why it's so great to have the opportunity to speak with you and your audience, because we really hope HR managers will reach out, and say, these are the credentials we recognize. Can they be digitized, and can they be put on a tablet? And another thing we said, almost all of the education on the tablets and the workforce stuff is free. There's a free option. So it's not limited to those who are incarcerated who have, family giving them money as they're incarcerated.
And I also think that this is a unique opportunity for partnerships. Prison tablets are new. They came about like around 2020. And so, and that was around the pandemic when there was an explosion of more tablets in prisons for all the reasons that Jane said. One, it was COVID, we were all on lockdown. And then in addition to that, we talk about worker shortages. Jane mentioned it inside of prison facilities. There's a shortage of guards. There's a shortage of staff. And so the tablets fill a gap. But what's important is that there's a unique opportunity today for us to get more corporations, some of the bigger corporations and other industries, to bring their skills, their digitized skills to the tablet. And we're hoping that many of them will reach out to us so that we can find ways to create more pathways for individuals as they're exiting prison or jail to be able to connect to some of those jobs that are available.
I love that you're doing this. I love that you're putting a call out right now that says, hey, reach out to us directly so we can help support you and you can help support us and provide that training to a workforce maybe that we haven't considered before. We will put links and information in the transcript of the show notes for you to be able to connect with these two directly. And I would encourage you to do so. And I'd love to hear from someone after the fact about how this might have changed the workforce or improved the organization or any stories, because we need more of these to just help spread the message. Everybody loves a good comeback story. So let's hear how this impacted the workforce positively. Teresa, I wanted to ask about R3, the R3 score reframe, how employers assess justice impacted candidates beyond the background check, because I mentioned the background check. So how do we assess candidates beyond the background check?
Yeah, so for many HR professionals, what they know is they put a call out for a position. A lot of folks apply, and at some point in their process, and it's at different places for different corporations, you decide that you're interested in a candidate and you run a background report. Well, for many corporations, they don't know how to understand and assess the individual candidate that's standing before them. And so what we've decided to do was to create a tool that doesn't hide the fact that a person has an arrest or a conviction record, but it gives you more data. Because quite frankly, the fact that I have a record is just one data point about me. And if you wanted to hire me, and if you wanted to know if I was qualified for a job, you need additional data. And that cannot and should not be the only data point that keeps you from hiring somebody who's really good and is the right candidate. So we provide two additional data points. We have an index of 0 to 10, and 0 means there's not a criminal offense, and then 10 means yes, there is, and it demonstrates risk. And what we have found is some employers they are just trying to assess what is the risk of this individual today. And in some cases, for corporations that have multiple roles that they're hiring for, they have a different risk tolerance. And so they can say, well, we want a 1 for this role, but for these 3 roles over here, we're willing to go up to a 4 or 5. And so that's one data point. So that's the 0 to 10 index. The second index is 300 to 850, similar to a credit score, but we are assessing this candidate pool against other people with records, and we can demonstrate how they're trending. So, and what we know is all of us understand what's a 650 just as it relates to our own credit score. So based upon that, it makes it comfortable for you to understand, oh, this person's a 2 on a risk index, and they're a 650 on the readiness index. And with these 2 extra data points, corporations are able to make other decisions. We give the standard criminal background check, so you see with us what you see with others. But with our tool, you get something else. And we know that the R3 score makes a difference. There are corporations that have used our report, and what they're saying is they went from a no pile of candidates with records. They allowed us to screen. With the screening, 65% of the candidates were hired at about an 85-90% retention rate a year and a half later. I think that there are more corporations that want that kind of success. And what Jane said earlier, she's absolutely right. People with records are looking for good homes, good corporations that they can come, land, and stay and retire, because they do not want to go through this process over and over and over again. Because every time they reapply for a job, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and sometimes even 20 years later, the background report stops them.
You're so right. I will say, having been an HR professional in an organization, I get the background check information. I don't have a lot of information. And so I might consult with legal or my boss, VP of HR, whoever, and then decide how to move forward. But we don't have all the information. We just have the record of what happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes, depending on the organization, no one follows up to ask for more information from the candidate. They just say, ooh, this is not for me. Moving on.
Yeah. And what you've described is what just about every HR professional that we've engaged with describes, that this is a high touch point candidate. It requires too much conversation. It creates tension, sometimes even among the different leaders who are having conversations around should we not. And when corporations are in doubt and they're just unsure, it's just easier to say no, quite frankly.
Are you partnering with background check companies for this? Because it would make sense for the background check to come through and then me to, or as the HR person, already have that information, so it doesn't slow down the hiring process and I don't continue to make a decision without all the information.
Yeah. So at this time, the way that the product is in market today, so the short answer is, could we partner with more background companies? Absolutely. Yes. We have multiple ways that corporations engage with us. In many cases, they go through their regular process. And when the background report comes in and they're not sure what to do, they bring us in. Others, we have replaced vendors, background. What we do is we package the background report into the R3 score. So there is no slowdown with us. When you get our background report, you get those 2 extra data points on top of it.
That's great. That's great. And I'm just curious because I'm thinking time is of the essence in hiring, but I'm, as an HR professional, I'm balancing a lot of things. So if I can have it all together in one place so that I can be informed and not impact hiring deadlines and different things, everybody wins.
Absolutely.
Wins. Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller-Merrell, and you're listening to the Workology Podcast, powered by Ace the HR Exam and Upskill HR. Today, I'm talking with Jane Oates and Teresa Hodge about second chance hiring. I'm thinking about my HR professionals here, those folks who are listening to the podcast, and I wanted to ask you all, what are maybe some practical steps, just a handful, maybe 3, that we can take to begin improving our hiring process and make it more fair chance?
Well, I'll take a stab at it first. I mean, I think that many HR professionals, quite frankly, don't get enough information from the people who are responsible for the jobs that who are overseeing the jobs they're trying to fill. And we've heard, I'm sure you've had a lot of guests on talking about skills first hiring. So hiring somebody that might have, a record is no different than hiring somebody who doesn't have a bachelor's degree. You want to look at their skills, right? Teresa and I are hell-bent on making sure that we're saying every day, every HR person should hire the best candidate, the most qualified candidate, not a feel-good candidate. That doesn't work. But if you could get your folks to talk in terms of skills, instead of telling you the job title that they're looking to fill, really put, as you said, Jessica, just 3 or 4 skills that you're looking for. Then it's really easy to match for anybody, not just people that are justice involved, but for anybody. Are they the right skills match for that job? Then you hire for skills. I think that's step one. And, I think then step two, and Teresa, I'll leave some steps for you. But I mean, for me, step two has to be recognition that hiring a diverse pool that includes people that might have been justice involved, people with disabilities, people of different ages. All of that should be respected and honored when they're giving the HR professional their own performance review. They should be rewarded for getting a bigger pool of talent to come into that company.
And I will just say, Jessica, that when considering this particular population, if you don't have HR, legal, and someone from the C-suite saying yes, this usually just doesn't work. It takes, our experience has been that usually a CEO goes somewhere or they listen to something like this and they're like, oh, okay, wait a minute, we need to hire some folks with records. But if you do not bring legal in, because it is a compliance issue, then that doesn't happen. And so you need all three working together. And then after that, I think if you're taking, want to take a step or a leap into this, identify a particular job. And then, like Jane said, look at the skills and the role of that. And then from there, you have a pathway. And so those are some of the things that we do kind of at Mission Launch. And so Mission Launch and R3 score together. That's how we work together. Is we often take corporations on learning journeys of how do we hire, where should we put the first couple of people, all of those type of things.
I love that you're talking kind of about a pilot program or a lighthouse. We're focusing on maybe one position that's hard to fill, getting all the parties involved so we're all at an understanding of how the process will work, and then bringing in and looking at hiring a few individuals so that we can understand and see the performance, the success, any additional policies or changes that need to be made in the processes, our hiring and retention process, maybe training with managers that needs to happen, just because this is maybe something that we haven't brought into the organization before.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we haven't had a chance to really talk about, but we have partnered with SHRM as well. And so they have been really a good partner. They have been an organization, quite frankly, who has championed second chance hiring. And they have really good insights and information around what is proven to have already worked. And so we don't want any corporations to feel like they got to step out there by themselves. If this is something that you're interested in, there are a lot of resources, tools, and there are pilot programs that we can help set up for you. And SHRM has really good wraparound services to support the corporations that are taking this type of a journey.
Amazing. Well, Jane, from your work at the Department of Labor, I wanted to ask what systematic changes you feel like still are needed to support this kind of inclusive hiring. We heard about SHRM, but what other things need to happen for us to be able to be successful and move forward?
Yeah, look, I'm a policy person and I'm embarrassed to tell you that I thought when we banned the box, the job was done, right? And really, it didn't even put a dent in what we need to do. So I think we need to rebuild the ecosystem. I think everyone listening would agree that the education and workforce system is incredibly siloed. And if there were ways that we could integrate that, because quite frankly, Jessica, you brought up some of them. The same things that are good for everybody are good for people that are justice involved. registered apprenticeships, on the job training, job training that involves a stipend that moves into a wage. All of those things work. And I wish that I had, when I was at the Department of Labor, done more of that integration and done more to break down the silos, because, we have programs for justice impacted at the Department of Justice at the federal level, at the Department of Labor, at the Department of Education, and they don't talk to one another. So how do we make sure that we build a more inclusive ecosystem so that we don't have to reinvent it every time we get a new population that we realize has been, really not included in fair hiring?
I love that we're talking about this. And I just want to reiterate that this is a diversity thing, diversity of hiring, diversity of background. And it's another group of people that can help make our organization more well-rounded. And these are all things that maybe we haven't considered in the past. Teresa, I wanted to ask what maybe are some of the biggest challenges you feel like individuals face in their first 90 days after release, and maybe how employers can help ease that transition, because it's a whole new world, bank account, driver's license, like all the things that you have to be able to get, and you have to do it relatively quickly. So talk us through how we can support.
Yeah. So one, I'm always kind of careful and cautious around this that particular question, and because again, when you think of the number of people 650,000 people come home from prison every year. It's a big number. Not everybody needs the same thing. However, what we're talking about is just humans. And so as humans, we all need the same thing. We need a place to live. We need a place to work. We need food and water. And, in a digital global environment, you definitely need a bank account. And often you need a bank account in order for you to be able to work. But a lot of people who are coming home from prison, they have all of those things. And then there are some who don't. And I will say that there are some considerations potentially for some of the people who you're going to hire, where they still may have a probation or a parole. So they might have to leave work just a little bit early, or they may have to make some kind of a concession at lunchtime that they're going to come in 15 minutes early and leave 15 minutes late to be able to do some type of a check-in that's required. And so those concessions are necessary for them to persist in life and society. And so I think that, it's just a little bit of give and take. What I will say is some of the most hardworking and committed people who I've met in life, I met while I was incarcerated, and I met since coming home and working with them. They want to just work, be productive, and be successful. And so they're going to do anything and everything that they have to do. But there are going to be some times where some concessions have to be made in order for them, or, we just have to pair them with a different kind of a role or different work hours in order for it to work.
I think this is great to point out, because we might not be familiar or thinking about this. I'm assuming this is also a way that you support the organizations, just to kind of give them a gentle reminder that, there might be different support schedules, adjustments that need to be made while they're in transition and for a while after.
Yeah. And I just want to add one more thing, which is there are a lot of amazing nonprofit organizations, faith-based groups that support men and women who have arrest or conviction records. We know that many employers really just want to hire talent, and they want that talent to show up, and they want them to do the job. They don't want to be in social services. And so that's why I said what I said, that there are a lot of amazing support services all around this country that will support the men and women who are coming home transitioning. And many of them, have good family support and friends and families that'll support them along the journey. But a good paying job goes a long way for anyone. And it really goes a long way for this particular population.
Absolutely. Jane, what opportunities do you see for companies that embrace second chance hiring?
Well, we've already mentioned the most important one. I mean, I think the fact you're going to get an employee who's not going to job hop. They're going to stay and build their career with you because they found the right home. And as Teresa said, they don't want to go through this again. But I think the second the second piece is really when you open up to any population, you become a different culture. I mean, there are other people who need the kinds of accommodations that justice impacted need. And if you see yourself all of a sudden as a company that wants to do what they have to do to retain talent, that's beyond money and benefits, but it's understanding and flexibility, I think you're just going to become a better company overall and attract the right kind of talent across the board.
I want to shift gears, Teresa, and talk about hackathons and sandbox programs, because I think this is really exciting. You've led hackathons and sandbox programs. What do these innovation labs show us about what's possible in this space?
So one, I think our organization Mission Launch has been doing hackathons all focused on reentry and reentry solutions for over a decade. And what we have found is just about anything is possible when you bring the right people in a room and you bring them there for over the course of 2 days. Usually our hackathons are somewhere between 2 days to 2.5 days. And it's a solutions lab. And so we have worked with government agencies at the federal level as well as a local level who wanted to, I remember in DC when DC wanted to do announce fair chance hiring and that they were banning the box. They brought that into a hackathon and we talked about what would it look like for employers and how could we get the word out to individuals who are impacted by incarceration that the box was removed and that where and when and how they needed to be able to address that, but also to corporations to let them know that DC did not want to fine corporations because maybe they didn't know the box had been banned from the application and when and how the government was going to move with that. So for us, in that 2.5 day, we were able to come with a campaign that they were able to use and to launch. Likewise, we get corporations, like maybe some of the people who are listening right now, who are thinking they want to do fair chance hiring. They come into a room, they learn a lot, and they're able to walk away with the next 5 steps that they need to take to move the process along in theirs. Last, there are individuals who come into the room who are just as impacted, and they actually launch businesses. We've had businesses launch. One of a co-op was launched at our hackathons one year. So we're really excited about what's possible. We just hosted a hackathon in Houston where we were hyper focused on for energy and utilities and just talking about what was possible in Texas. And so, a lot happening there. We have a hackathon coming in LA in November this year, and we're doing it in partnership with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition out in LA, and then also Aventive is one of our title sponsors.
And Teresa, I just wanted to add, you brought up the Houston hackathon, which was unbelievable. But for those employers in Texas, the state has made a law that folks who are released have to be hired within 6 months of release. I mean, so HR directors in that's huge state are going to be under some pressure to help the state meet that mandate. So I think it was just amazing there. It was like standing room only at that hackathon. And you not only saw businesses there, but you saw businesses that had been started by folks with criminal records. That one guy with the landscaping business,
Yep.
I mean, he's already hired 60 people. It's amazing. So this is really going to catch fire. I find sometimes when a state the size of Texas does something like that, other states follow.
Absolutely.
We'll link to the resources for Texas. As somebody who lives in Texas, I'm in Austin. I'm not sure this is something that all HR professionals in our state really know about. So let's get the word out there and let's get involved. To kind of close things up, I wanted to ask, what gives you both hope for the future when it comes to second chance hiring? And maybe what message do you want to leave our HR leaders with who are just starting to explore this area?
I'll go first. For me, Jessica, what gives me hope is this conversation. And all of the people who are listening to you and who will learn about fair chance hiring, second chance hiring, and maybe the first time hiring for someone who's just has an arrest or conviction record. The thing that I would really want to impress upon your listeners are these are your neighbors, quite frankly. They are our family members. They're our community members. And They are not quite as scary as you think in many cases. And you shop alongside them, you pump gas alongside them, they go to school with your children. And so at the end of the day, we are engaging with people with records on a regular basis in our everyday life. The opportunity we have is to create pathways of employment for all Americans who are able-bodied and are trying their best to be productive. And as a society, we all win when everyone has an opportunity at a good family sustainable wage.
Yeah. And I would, Teresa, I'm just so hopeful because every time we encounter people, first of all, Teresa and I have become sisters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're family. And there's no question that she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But other people that I meet who have had an involvement with the law in one way or another are incredibly smart, incredibly resourceful, and so loyal, not only to their friends, but to their employer. And I would just say Eventive, being on that board has given me hope because Eventive I guess it was 2021, started walking the walk. They started making a real, a targeted effort to look at their hiring practice, not just to hire people who were justice impacted, but to take away the hurdles of hiring talented people who happen to be justice impacted. And they've hired nearly 100 people since then. And I just, I wish I had this kind of data for every company, but the retention rate for this subgroup of population is 82%. I mean, look, a 4-year retention policy of 82%, every company would kill for that. So that gives me real hope. And again, Jessica, thank you so much because being able to talk to real HR leaders is such a great chance for us to continue to be hopeful.
Of course. Well, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to talk with us. Resources on how to get in touch with you, as well as Texas and any other piece of information to help HR leaders become more informed in this area. We'll include them in the transcript notes of the show. But I really appreciate you two taking your time to chat with us today.
Thank you for making this available. We appreciate it.
It's really important for us as HR leaders to learn more about second chance hiring initiatives and how they might be able to impact our organizations, but also the communities where we live. Thank you to Jane and Teresa for such a powerful and practical conversation. If you are an HR leader ready to rethink your hiring pipeline, don't wait until the next second chance month to act. Remember, opportunity is the most powerful rehabilitation tool we have. Visit the show notes for this episode and get the links and other resources we mentioned today. And most importantly, thank you for joining the Workology Podcast. It's sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE the HR exam. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. My name is Jessica Miller-Merrell, and I'm so excited that you joined us today. We'll see you next time.